much, much trial and tribulation and headaches and all that kind of stuff.
Modern technology at its finest, man.
Oh, Jesus. You ain't kidding. You ain't kidding. So let me see if I can
green, blue back here. Oh, I like blue.
There we go. Okay, I can see the chats on the screen, I think, anyway. Flux is with us as hilarious thumbnail. Yeah, don't I'll change the thumbnail here later because that was one of the many struggles that Max and I have been screwing with here for the last hour. We've been trying to figure out how to get both of us onto the same live stream for quite a while. Never quite did figure it out, and then finally Max figured out that, hey, check this out. Hey, check it out. Paul Bielatovich is there. What's up, Paul? Paul is I don't talk about my full-time employer too much here on my channel. Matter of fact, I don't talk about it at all due to conflict of interest. But Paul has and I've gotten to know each other through business, and is a magnificent guitar player. I encourage all of you guys to follow him on Facebook and all of his social media stuff because, like I said, he's a really, really talented guy and an even better human being. So I am here with my buddy Max Carlisle, who you guys all know from the Guitar Max YouTube channel. And if you are not familiar with Max's channel, every time that Max appears on my channel and we do something together, it always seems to be, most of you guys all seem to not only be familiar with him, but also seem to be regular viewers of him. So Max and I decided to hang out here today and hang out with you guys because Max has a new album coming out. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Titanium Rain. That's the name. And as you probably, as I know you know, I did a Kickstarter campaign for it. And it was a success. It was, like October to November. And I was thrilled with, all the people that got involved and people that supported the album and that kind of stuff. And the album I'm now committed to releasing it in the summer of the coming year. So I've got about 6 months to get it all finished up and everything, but I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling very inspired. Been playing a lot of riffs lately, and it's great.
I've been telling myself this for a while that, because I've when I am, and this because, we both have guitar gear channels on YouTube, right? So when I'm doing a demo or something and I'm, sometimes most of the time I generally try to include a full track, 60-ish second, drums, bass, all that kind of stuff. And, my horrible mixing, and recording skills aside, part of that process obviously is coming up with, with a riff and, something to solo over, and some days I, I'm, the creative juices are flowing better than others, but, there's some of them that I can't, they come out and I'm like, man, that's a really, really cool riff I need to do something with. So I've got a pile of those that I keep telling myself I want to, turn into full length tracks and, record my own album. I just haven't gotten around to it yet because there's a lot of work that goes into that. And time is, of course, limited. But that said, what were some of your inspirations for some of this kind of for some of the material on your new album?
Well, there's always favorite bands that I listen to, right? And a lot of the bands I like to listen to, I think, are really riff-based bands, really killer riffs and stuff. And of course, I love the lead parts too, but been listening to a lot of like Accept and a lot of the other German metal bands, Gamma Ray, that kind of stuff. And then Loudness, Japanese metal band, is always a favorite of mine, and those are bands that have really great riffs. So I've been, as much as I love playing lead guitar, and there's going to be solos, of course, all over this album, I've really been trying to focus more on coming up with killer riffs
Mhm.
and riffs that lead into, riffs that transition into cool lead parts at the same time. That's something I've really been focused on, because I've been listening, when I hear a lot of modern metal instrumental stuff these days, sometimes there's too much of a separation between the riff section and the lead section, right? And you don't quite have this smooth connection between the two different parts of the songs and stuff. And so I've been really trying to, come up with a killer riff and a killer lead part, but tie them together in a way that sounds very seamless and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But the thing you were talking about with, when you come up with a riff or something that you're using for a video, music
Right.
from the dungeon or the sounds of the dungeon or something would be cool, man.
Well, ironically, I've talked a lot lately about I'm probably going to change. I'm definitely going to change the name of my channel here soon, because the guitar, the Roberts Guitar Dungeon thing was cool for a while. It was, it had a certain element of humor to it there for a while, and now it's just honestly, it's kind of gotten to the point that I'm starting to feel like, if I'm having a harder time taking it seriously. I think the general public is probably going to feel the same way. So I'm going to slowly transition into just change the channel over to just my name. You know, I mean, that's really what I want to be known by. So
Well, you could
that's that.
you could work yourself out of the dungeon, right? Like right now you're in the dungeon. Maybe you could move up to like the courtyard.
But
So it could be Robert's Guitar Courtyard.
the living room or something.
Yeah, yeah.
My wife would shoot me if I did that, but but yeah, it's not a bad idea. Uh, yeah. So do any of the a lot of times you construct your gear demos pretty similar to the way that I do. You try to showcase some tones, but of what whatever the gear is in question by itself, and then try to do it in a full mix like I do. Have you? Did any of your like the stuff like the riffs that you may have created in one of your demo videos inspire come into play any at all into the new record, or are you like me, sometimes you take it a lot more seriously than others?
Well, a good riff is a good riff. I don't care
Right.
where I come up with it, if it's for a video or, you think of it in the shower or something like that. But I mean, it's like,
Right.
I can't say there are any exact riffs that I came up for videos, but there are stylistic things that definitely
Mhm.
I'm using, where I was playing something in a video and I listened back to it later on, like when I'm editing it, right? And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so I took something that was like a similar idea and maybe use that. I'm going to be using that for some of the songs and that kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
maybe it's in a different key or a different tempo or something like that. But it's a similar vibe, I guess you could say.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I always enjoy enjoy the riffs and stuff that you come up with on your channel, and I often wonder, so is especially when I hear one that I think is really really cool, uh I often wonder, so, how much did that just come, 'cause I think you're a phenomenal guitar player, by the way, so I mean
Thank you.
I've absolutely, of course, so I often wonder, just that could that's coming up with those really cool riffs just come naturally, or how much do you have to really really put some time and effort and dig deep and search everywhere for inspiration like I do, uh because and sometimes I do come up with something pretty cool just on the fly, but not usually. So hey, there's Jim Woodard here. There's been a number of people that joined the chat here that let me see if I can view the chat here on my Am I able to do that? Orientation's locked. Rotate device back. All right.
I can see it on my end here. I've got it up in the background on
No, do
my computer.
you can
Flux,
see it?
Flux is well, just like I've got the window open on my computer over here, but Flux is saying Roberts Guitar Garden. That's a good one.
Oh boy. Here, I didn't even think to do that. That might be a good idea.
It's a little delayed, but we can at least see the comments and stuff. So
yeah. Well, that's that is. There we go. Okay, with the stupid sideways thumbnail. Perfect. Cool. All righty. Hey, and what you can't see though, there's somebody just hit, not the super chat, but somebody did just hit up the PayPal donation, which is down there. Should be linked up down there in the description. May not be, but thank you very, very much. We appreciate the support. Jackson, there we go. I got it pulled up here myself. Jack Stollery, Flux, screen names, Quentin James, Ragnar 666, Jim Woodard's here. Jim, we could have used your help this morning trying to figure out how to get this Discord live stream server thing happening. Elmiris Chirmatulinas. I'm sure I murdered that, but that is a username I'm not familiar. Welcome. And Block of Delighter, Janice Lala, hello, William Hall. Hello, everybody. So, if you are just popping in here, we're hanging out. I'm hanging out here with Max Carlisle of the Guitar Max channel, and we're just hanging out. So, we got gear channels. Let's talk gear.
Yeah.
What'd you use on the new record?
Well, I'm using kind of a mix of plugins and then also some real, live amps and stuff. And obviously I'm still working on the album, so sometimes you run into this thing where you record stuff and like a month later you come back and you completely record it all over again. But I'm pretty kind of picky about here, I'll grab a pedal here I've got. This pedal has really become the key to my lead tone, the Boss Super Overdrive SD1.
Just good old-fashioned SD1, huh?
Yeah, I love this. I love this. And, I don't use all the gain on it, but I crank the level really high, to get a really saturated, push the amp kind of tone.
Right.
And, I love it. There's something about the high notes that I get from this pedal. Like, it adds like a fatness and a really nice sustain to the really high notes that other pedals, it just, I don't know, they get brittle sounding or they just get too thin or something like that. But somehow this thing retains a lot of the power and the thickness in when you play really high notes. So that's become a key part of my lead tone. So that's probably going to be on most of the lead tones on the album. But I'm using a variety of guitars and stuff for this, depending on the parts and that kind of thing. But it's something that's kind of cool about this is like, because I said originally in the Kickstarter is that it's been 7 years since I've done a full solo album, and in that time I've learned so much more about gear and different sounds I like and that kind of stuff. And
right.
So I'm really excited to kind of apply everything I've learned over the past several years and put it, cement it, right, and put it together on something that I'm going to release. So I'm really pretty stoked.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear it. Very
Thank
much
you,
so.
man.
I've been telling you that for a while now. So I'm on a strange kick because I'm like, I think you're probably like this as well. My musical tastes, I like what I like, and I've always been pretty skeptical of new music, but I keep becoming more and more skeptical the older I get. And I'm sorry, but Judas Priest's Painkiller is never going to get old for me.
Oh, yeah.
Metallica's Ride the Lightning is never going to get old to me. I still wear both of those records out like they just came out. I do listen to new stuff. I do listen to new stuff, and that's how I've gotten into bands like Five Finger Death Punch has become one of my all time favorite bands. So I'm not that closed minded, but I am pretty skeptical. But here lately, I've been partially challenging myself and partially forcing myself to to see what I've been missing with stuff. Really, I've been exploring the whole doom genre lately, which is not something that man, I've made fun of that genre on my channel plenty of times because it's not, just because, not that I have anything against it, just cracking a few jokes here and there, but it really is something I hadn't really explored too much, and now I'm really getting into like Candlemass in particular, as a band that's caught my attention. So, I think, but you seem to have a lot of similar musical tastes, like the '80s shred stuff is, that's the stuff that made me want to learn to play guitar in the first place,
Right.
when I was a kid. So, and, you mentioned Accept, for example, what other bands have you been listening to, either new or old?
Yeah. Well, I'm a real, I can't stop listening to power metal. It's like a problem I have. So, like, I Twilight Force has a new album coming out.
Mhm.
And power metal is kind of funny because it's like there are new bands and bands that are releasing new albums, but the style hasn't really changed that
No,
much, right?
it hasn't.
So,
No,
yeah, so
I
it's
think that's actually cool. One of the
yeah.
coolest things about that genre, though. What's that band from Sweden that I've Hammerfall?
Oh yeah,
You're
yeah.
listening to them? Those guys are
Sure.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those guys are awesome.
Yeah,
I,
they're terrific.
I stumbled across a music video of theirs several years back, and that I went and bought a couple of their records like almost immediately. I still listen to them all the time. They're a great band.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, and Hammerfall, like, you can put on their first or second album, and you can put on one of their last 2 albums, and you can't tell, it's like which one came out first. You can't tell by listening to it, which
and
is
it all
I
sounds
mean,
like it was released at the same time that Dio put out,
yeah.
Holy Diver.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
So it's I mean, yeah, so I listen to a lot of that stuff, and there's a lot of well, okay, so I guess a little bit of an exception to that is there are, people talk about disco metal bands like Battle Beast or Beast in Black, and those 2 bands are sort of intertwined because of the guitar player that got kicked out of the first band or something. But um, and so I guess stylistically that's a little bit of a new thing in the past few years.
mm,
But those are still, they're still considered power metal bands, right? But I like
sure.
that, that stuff's a lot of fun too. Like,
Mhm.
was it Beast in Black, From Hell with Love or something like that? Yeah, but
Not
that's good
familiar with
stuff.
them.
But yeah, I mean I've been listening to the new Twilight Force, which, like I said, which is that's like, the elves are attacking. Watch out for the elves. I mean, it's totally just like over the top, nerdy power metal stuff, but I can't
Mhm.
stop listening to it. It's a lot of
Right.
fun. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, that was the stuff back in the. I wanted to. I don't know. I've always said that James Hetfield was the guy that inspired me to want to play guitar more than anybody. And that's still true. But it was the mid '80s when when Metallica was putting out those classic Metallica records. That's also when Dio and Maiden and all those you know at that time, we just called them metal bands. The Shredders from that era were all coming up, and if you weren't alive in that era, I don't think you can, that. I think it's kind of hard to really envision just how big of a deal that whole scene was. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing people, metalheads everywhere that were, everybody had an Iron Maiden jacket. It's just how music had evolved at that point. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of people now, there's a lot of younger people now who find that music and they like it. And so you see somebody who's
mhm,
18 or 19 or 20 years old and they've got, they're decked out in the leather and, they got the perm and all that stuff. And I love seeing that, but it's really hard to, like exactly what you're saying, it's really hard to appreciate that back then that wasn't like some weird cult subgenre or something.
right.
It's like that was, where
That was
like Demi
that was
Lovato
mainstream
was
pop
doing like
culture.
yeah, it was just that was what mainstream music was,
Yeah.
which is kind of incredible when you
Hmm.
think about it. I mean, seems like a happier time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that like nowadays, I don't know if they're, can I ask how old you are? I'm curious how close we are in age.
I'm 39. 39.
All right, okay, so so we're you're a few years apart, but it seems to be guys that are like my age. I'm 45. My age and older that are the I hate this term, but they're the boomers that are whining about how guitar music is dead nowadays. It makes a lot of sense to think they're the guys and gals that were coming up in the '80s, when guitar music was mainstream pop culture music, as opposed to how now it's you get a lot more it's there is a lot more electronic music now than there was then, but there's guitar music ain't going anywhere. Guitar's not going anywhere. It's still the most popular instrument, on the
Yeah.
planet, and that's not changing either. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and there's still people doing cool new things on guitar. So that hasn't changed.
mm,
I think guitar is as exciting as it's ever been, but it's just a lot of the stuff that's going on now in guitar is kind of like music for musicians, right? It's like guitar playing for other guitarists and that kind of thing, rather than so much like being part of mainstream music. But mainstream music is just kind of in the toilet anyway. And I'm not saying that like, oh, I don't like the sound of it, but like the industry is
mm,
there's not much left of the music
no,
industry.
there's not. It's
You
used
know,
to be if you ran into a a famous or well-known musician that there's a lot more that there's certainly plenty of famous and well-known musicians out there, but they're not. Their lifestyles are a lot more mortalized, closer to you and me, to our lifestyles nowadays than that. Used to, if you ran into somebody like that back in the '80s or '90s, you know, they were doing pretty well. And
yeah,
I'm not trying to associate money with guitar. I hate association that the money with music, but that's just the reality. So,
yeah.
uh, there's been a couple of people that I've noticed in the chat that all thought that you were a lot younger than you just said that you are, and I agree with them actually. So, uh,
I'm
I
glad I'm fooling them.
what's that?
I'm glad I'm fooling them.
Well, I I bring that up because I want to segue into something a little bit different. You know, you've been uh, you're obviously in peak physical condition, and I think you even have a bodybuilding background, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, cool. I read, I think I read an interview recently with John Petrucci. Who's also got he's also a pretty physically fit dude. He also said that something that was very interesting to me because he said that he has always associated weightlifting with guitar playing. And kind of the two is like not necessarily one and the same, but very very closely related. I'm curious how you might associate those two things together as well, if at all, if you ever have, or if they're just two totally different aspects of your life. Uh, I don't know. I'm just I'm curious.
It's a good question. I'd say they're really pretty separate aspects. I mean, there are things that you can look at in both of them that are similar, like the way you practice guitar and you develop your skills in guitar. You go through a similar mindset when you're working out in the gym and that kind of stuff. Like you're practicing a lick, there's a lot of repetition, like you're doing reps in
Mm-hmm.
the gym, right? You can find a lot of parallels like that. But as far as being in those worlds, I find them to be extremely different, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there's much connection at all. I mean, when I was maybe around 2013, 2014, like I was much more into like I was still doing close to doing bodybuilding competitions back then, and I was playing in bands and stuff, and so I was like the big dude
Mm-hmm.
on stage with the guitar, and I always looked out of place. And sometimes
Right.
that's good because it makes me stand out. But I was always kind of the odd man out in a lot of ways. So, um, and yeah, I guess there are a lot of guys that I know that work out or are in bodybuilding and they also play guitar, but it's kind of something they do just for fun once in a while. Like there's not very many guys that are playing in bands that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I mean, there's a few like, hey, Kane Roberts, Kane Roberts, Kane
Yeah.
Roberts. Yeah, I know about Kane Roberts.
Yeah.
There's a few
Yeah.
guys
That
that,
that
and
dude's
George
chiseled from.
Lynch went through his like workout phase in the late '90s and stuff. But
Mhm.
there's not that many people.
Yeah. Well, Kane Roberts in particular. I mean, that dude's chiseled from granite, and I think he's almost. I don't think he's 60 yet, but he's close
Yeah,
to it. I mean,
yeah,
and he his physique is really really impressive. So if you haven't heard, he is he was Alice Cooper. He's probably Alice Cooper's probably his most well known guitar player in his solo career up until Orianthi and Nita Strauss. Here recently, everybody seems to know who Kane Roberts was when he was playing with Alice Cooper. And he just recently rejoined Alice Cooper's band after Nita Strauss moved on to Demi Lovato, I think is who she's playing with now.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, Alice called up Kane, said, dude, let's go out and tour again. So they're out touring again.
Yeah.
And,
What a cool thing for him.
oh,
What
yeah,
a
absolutely.
cool opportunity to come back to that band after
Mhm. Yeah.
30 years or
30
something.
years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, you look at photos of when he was on stage with him 30 years ago. He had the big puffy permed hair and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. That's about the only difference though between what he looked like then and what he looks like now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I've been following him on social media for a while. I enjoy him quite a bit.
He did some interesting things too. Like, I mean, he had a solo career,
Mm.
and then I think he did like some illustrating. Like he worked as an illustrator or something. Like he did some comic book art or something like
I
that.
think I think
He
I've
did
heard.
kind of a variety of different things. Just kind of
Mm.
an interesting. Lived an interesting life, right?
Yeah. Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a fan. There's been I'm gonna address a couple things here in the chat.
Okay.
And Infamous does kind of become an inside joke here because he's a regular viewer of this channel and almost always pops onto the live streams. And it's a very very strange username, and I can't pronounce it, so I pretty much have kind of come to intentionally murder it every time I mention it. That said, he's asking, have either of us ever tried a solar guitar yet? As an Ola England's brand, solar guitars.
I played one for like 3 minutes once, but I haven't had the chance to actually like spend a lot of time with it, and it wasn't even plugged in. So
you got 3 minutes more experience than I do with them. I really want to get a hold of one because I think they're uber cool. I think they're, from everything that I've seen and everything I've heard, I think they seem to be phenomenal guitars. Really kind of inspired by the Washburn parallax stuff that I think Ola was using prior to starting solar guitars. So I think they're really cool instruments, but I haven't been able to get a hold of one. And I don't as much as I wish I could just go out and buy guitars at will. It doesn't life doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So
yeah. The solar the stuff that I mean, I love the styling of them. So that alone is really cool. And actually, it's funny you mentioned the Washburn parallax stuff. I love those, man. I'm not sure why. I mean, they were kind of successful, but when they came out, I saw those and I'm like, oh man, they really nailed this,
Yeah.
Brought out some really cool models and stuff. But I was always a little surprised they didn't become more talked about.
I agree. There were the people that did know. Washburn's kind of, I don't want to say that they've kept a low profile because I think of the big guitar brands. I mean, they're one of the oldest. And people are still familiar with them. But nowadays, other than they got the Nino Betancourt models, and then a bunch of acoustics and a bunch of entry level beginner stuff, and that's like their niche nowadays. Not that that's bad. I'm not, not that that's bad at all. We need those companies, in our industry as well, especially this time of year. This is the time of year when parents are buying instruments, first instruments for their kids and stuff like that. As I see in my industry all the time. But, for me personally, as a, pro, semi-pro, fairly experienced guitar player, it's not something that winds up on my radar very often these days. I love budget gear, but budget gear and entry level gear is, I don't consider to be the same thing.
Right.
So
what I'll ask you something. So what just looking back on this past year, is there anything in particular that jumps out to you now as being impressive, something new that you ran across, or just something that changed or anything like that that like impressed you in a good way?
Like a specific piece of gear, and I can't believe I don't own one yet. I think the most impressive, awesome piece of gear that has come out from any company over the last several years is still the Two Notes Captor X.
Yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal device. I don't really have. I have a Captor plugged in. I got it plugged in, so I can't move it. But it doesn't have quite as much. The Captor doesn't have quite as much attenuation to it, and it doesn't have the variety of onboard impulse responses that the Captor X does. But for this setup, I don't need any of that. But I still think that is something you see every single time you see a famous guitar player, playing in the studio, playing live or something. There's almost always a Captor X sitting on top of their amp in the background somewhere. It seems like, Two Notes hit one out of the park. Hey, Tony Peppers is here. What's up, dude? So they're really, really, I think it's a great piece of gear. Now, as far as like, I don't know, like a genre or category, and I think you've demoed some of this stuff on your channel too. But man, some of these budget pedal companies and budget guitar companies are kicking some serious ass right now. I mean,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable. I mean, this is, I don't know if you would call these guys in the budget category, but because it's in reach, here's a pedal brand called X Gear, that I think you only see you see they're sold on Amazon. I've demoed a few of their pedals. This overdrive in particular is amazing. I love this thing. One of the best overdrives that I've run across in recent high gain overdrives anyway that I've run across in recent years. Actually, now this company, Nuex, I have received confirmation that is how that brand is pronounced. Nuex is how you pronounce it. So, this is a discontinued pedal called delay pedal called the Time Force. I don't know that I've ever actually demoed this one because I think I bought it before I started my channel. But here recently, the video hasn't gone up yet, but I demoed they've got a pedal called the Recto Distortion. Rectifier in a box type of distortion pedal. I think I bought it used for like $40, and I was shocked at how accurate that thing sounds compared to a recorded sound of a dual rectifier. So I know you've demoed some of that kind of stuff on your channel too, and have had similar experiences. So
the it's kind of amazing. Like the what do I have over here? I've got a hot tone, multi effects board, right? Tone, hot tone. That's another thing that people argue about. But
did you see my video recently that had brands like that we can't figure out how to pronounce the name of? Yeah, both Nuex and hot tone, whatever it is. Yeah, they were both in it, but
yeah. Hotone. That's the one I like. Yeah. No, I feel like the biggest. I mean, these things are so good now. It's like, but there's always the classic challenge is you have to learn how to use it, right? You have to sit down and like read the instruction manual PDF, right? You don't even put it in the box anymore, and then learn how to use it because there's so many features and so many things you can do with it, and so many different ways to use it. Mm-hmm. But the sounds you get out of these things are just incredible. Stereo effects and all kinds of things, and all of them you can use as an interface, right? I mean, that's old news now, and just it's kind of amazing. But it's almost like too many options, right? Like that's become, I feel like, one of the big problems now. Yeah.
Analysis paralysis.
Right.
I think they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something I'm seeing in the comments here that I see all the time, right? And somebody's saying, "Oh, I don't want to support Chinese companies," right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you get a lot of comments like this.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
And I know, what's that?
All the time.
Yeah. So, and I get them all the time too. And I know not everybody says it for the same reason,
right?
But one of my big goals, like as a YouTuber and as a guitar YouTuber, one of my big things that I want to do at some point, I want to travel to China and go to some of the factories and interview people, do a tour of the factory and interview people and that kind of stuff. And I want people to be able to see what it's actually like, what the work conditions and that kind of stuff.
That would be awesome.
If some people, I know there are some people who don't want to support Chinese companies because it's like, well, communism and the government subsidizes things and that kind of stuff. And like, okay, if that's your angle, I can kind of understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea that slave laborers are making something like this, like, it's an absolute fantasy. And I would love to I would love to like finally, at least in the guitar world, at least in the guitar community, I would love to dispel that myth, you know. And honestly, like a lot of the stuff I've been reviewing lately is like, you know, like Eart, right? And some of these new weird companies.
I've demoed one of their guitars
Yeah.
before. Yep.
And these are all like I kind of think it's a little bit. Oh, this is plugged in actually. Hold on. I think it's a little bit insulting. Like, and I don't mean this in like a PC way or anything like that, but this is such a nice instrument. Okay. It has obviously, when you sit down and you play this, it has obviously been made by people who really care about their
Yeah.
work, right?
I demoed a guitar from that very brand on my channel a couple years ago, and I ended up selling the guitar, but I regret selling it because you're right, it was a phenomenal instrument for at that
Yeah.
time. I think it sold for like I don't know $300-400 or something. Tell me one of the bigger, more well-known guitar companies that's building guitars for $400 that are that level of quality. I'll
Right.
wait.
Yeah.
Because there's not
But just,
many.
yeah, just the idea that like, I mean, it's, you know, if you went to somebody in China who's building a guitar like that, and you told them, well, you're only building this you're only building this guitar because you're being forced to, or something like that. I mean,
Right.
it would, like, imagine if somebody said that to you when you care so much about your work and what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing and that kind of stuff. So
Sure.
anyway, but I mean, just to go back to my original point, that's something I would really love to do, and obviously, traveling to China right now is not going to be. I mean, I can't afford to do something like that, but also uh, with all the COVID stuff going on, it would be tricky. But
Well,
it's something I want to do in the future. It's a solid goal of mine.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I would enjoy seeing something like that actually. And I'm seeing in the chat from viewers of this channel that plenty of people are agreeing with me. So if you are ever able to pull that off and this is going for any guitar channel that's watching this, they're able to pull that off. By God, for all God's sake, do it.
Yeah,
I think there's people, especially over here in this hemisphere. I think that really want or I don't know, really don't have any idea what's actually going on over there. And unfortunately, I think some of the call it a myth, is some of it is based on political stuff. Some of it's based on whatever it might there's any number of different places that it comes from. Um, but at the end, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a lot of people are have a it's a great big huge misconception. It's a
right.
very very common misconception.
Yeah,
So
and there's a guy. There's some guys I was talking to recently, and these are like top guys at a major guitar company based in the U.S. Right, and I was talking to them about this, and they kind of opened my eyes to one thing which I hadn't even thought about before, but this idea that, and it's a great idea, don't get me wrong, but this idea that, look, let's support American companies, right? Buy
right.
something that's made in America. Okay, great. I am all for that. If you
Mm-hmm.
can, if your
Sure.
neighbor or somebody local is building something, go, please support them, right?
Of course.
But
We'll
think
talk
about
about
a
that in a minute.
guitar. Yeah. So something that these guys like pointed out to me, you cannot, it is technically impossible to build a guitar and everything involved in that and not get something from China,
Right.
because like the chemicals that are used in the paint,
Mm-hmm.
like things like that, it's only made in China. Like there are things that you would have to get, like the rubber that's on the or the plastic coating that's on the wire, weird little details like that that like is not made in America, period.
Yep.
So it's like okay, yeah, maybe you get the wood and the work is done, the labor is done in America, fantastic. You assemble it, do the setup, all that stuff, you sell it to somebody here. Great.
Yep.
It's still not 100% made in America.
Yep.
And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish it wasn't the case, right?
Sure.
I wish we could do end-to-end 100% manufacturing here, but it's like, it's the reality of the world we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it is. One thing that another area of the industry that I do want to address, and this is not because Tony Peppers, the great Tony Peppers, by the way, of Peppers Pedals, is in the chat right now. But he has certainly reminded me of this because he's in this category. There's this new movement, I'll call it, of boutique builders, and these are guys that are building guitars, pedals, amps, and stuff on the side. Most of them got full-time jobs. Tony, by the way, is laid up in bed right now after surgery. Tony, I certainly hope you get well soon. And he mentioned that in the chat, but he also posted that on Facebook here earlier in the week. So get well soon, sir. But I'm seeing these amazing products coming from guys that are building stuff in their off hours from the daytime job at their kitchen tables. And again, I'll use Tony as an example. He's got his overdrive pedal called the Dirty Tree. That thing's. Have you played one? Have you heard or seen any demos or anything of it? Check it out.
No, unfortunately.
Go check it out. The Peppers Pedals Dirty Tree. It's I don't know if it's an overdrive or a distortion. I haven't gotten my hands on one yet, but everybody that I've talked to that has said that this is like the most kick-ass overdrive pedal they've ever gotten their hands on. Particularly for like high gain amps. So you got guys like that are just building these phenomenal products. In their off hours. There's there's Tony, there's Highwind Amplification, Jupiter Effects, Chris Jupiter Effects, has been able to turn that into his full-time gig. His is just taken off like crazy. There in the chat, Tony says 2,600 Dirty Trees shipped.
Wow.
There's like a lot of the big guitar channels. I know Fluff has demoed one, and a lot of like nationally signed artists, well-known artists are using them. So really, really cool stuff. I try to demo, do stuff for my channel and those guys whenever I can. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. Have you demoed anything like that recently that comes to mind? The boutique stuff.
No, not really boutique stuff. Well, no, not lately. There's right now, because it's December and everybody's getting Christmas gifts and stuff. I've been trying to. I haven't done any boutique stuff because I know people are not going to probably buy that stuff for
right.
For
I kind of try to cater a lot of my my stuff this time of year as well. To what's going on in the industry. So, hey, Eric, here's a name you and I both recognize. Gary Holt bought one of the Dirty Trees recently, according to Tony in the chat.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Let's see. There was something else here in the chat that I saw that I wanted to address. Let me find it. Where to go? There it is. Username Mario Navarrete. Do you think JHS pedals are way overpriced for what they provide? What say you, Max?
JHS pedals?
Yeah.
I mean, overpriced for what it provides. Yeah, that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily make it a bad deal. I mean, it's like there's so many pedals these days, and
sure,
it's pretty hard to find pedals that are truly unique. You turn the knobs a little different on one pedal and you get the same sound from another pedal, that kind of stuff, right? But
right. They, I think they're priced that way for a reason, but JHS
Yeah.
and I think the same could be said for that's probably true for Wampler and Keeley. Those guys that I don't know if you really still consider them to be boutique brands anymore because they've both got great big factories and those guys are really well known in the industry. They've been around for decades now. Regardless, that's beside the point. But they're being the fact that they are all quote unquote made in USA. It does drive the price up a little bit. That said, JHS and every single one of those other brands that I mentioned all source their parts, some of their parts anyway, from Behringer, who are absolutely 100% I think they're headquartered in Germany, but all of their production is all in China.
Right.
So do with that what you will, but that's just another example of the point that you were making earlier. With the guitar companies and the chemicals used in the paint and the finishes and stuff like that. Pedal companies, amp companies doing the exact same thing. There's a little bitty, teeny, tiny transistor or something that's probably about that big.
Yeah.
And they need 2,000 of them for whatever it is. They got to get those overseas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, at least you can say, well, you're getting, the labor's in the U.S., which I think to a lot of people that's kind of the difference, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not discounting any of that. I recognize that as still very important to a lot of people, particularly a lot of Americans.
Yeah.
I'm not discounting that at all. But but you're I guess what I'm alluding to is what you were alluding to, and the term "made in USA" is not quite as pure as what it maybe once was. Again, debatable, but as a lot of people think it is.
Right. Yeah. And when I originally brought that up, like the guys at the company that I was talking about, we were having the same conversation, and they were telling me, like, we wish we could get all the parts from the USA. Like, we wish we could get everything we need
right
from the USA, but it's like if you try to do it, you can't build a guitar. Like, you just can't get everything you need. And it's like, in order to build a guitar, are you going to go and open up a chemical factory or in the US or something like that? It's virtually impossible to do.
Yeah.
So
a lot has to happen in order to to get to that point.
Yeah, but I think the stuff that I really that kind of resonates with me, like when we're talking about these pedals and stuff, you see these guys who build, they build these pedals, and like each one is slightly different, or they'll be using like brass, like, I don't know, like brass knobs and screws and stuff, and they make them look all steampunk and stuff, and like each one is slightly, like, you can tell it's handmade, but it's not handmade in a bad way. It's handmade in a good way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love that stuff, so, but yeah, it's like, I mean, but it's so tough when you're talking about from a consumer's perspective, right? It's so hard for somebody to justify spending an extra $150 on a pedal that sounds the same as this other mass-produced one, right? But
yeah,
I hope that there will be enough of a market for that stuff where the small builders can continue doing that stuff, because that's kind of some of my favorite stuff that comes out. There's I wish I could remember the name of it, but there's a guy that builds pedals from like parts from airplane cockpits or something, and so he uses like all these switches and knobs and stuff that are all like surplus aircraft parts, and these pedals, they look so cool. It's like, even if it sounds bad, like I still want one.
Wow. That's cool. That's very cool. That's unique too. Not too many. I don't know anybody else doing that. If you figure out who that is, let me know. If you remember the name. So
yeah.
Whoa, this is interesting. Tony Pepper says DigiTech just got bought by Court, which I knew that happened earlier this year. Court purchased. DigiTech was owned prior to that. They were owned by Harman. Harman is the parent company of JBL and AKG and Soundcraft and what's the power amp? Crown power amps, or in that. There's a bunch of all those brands. Yeah, and Harman, I believe, is actually owned by LG. So, long story short, the DigiTech was one of those brands that was owned by Harman. Harman sold DigiTech because they haven't done anything with DigiTech in several years anyway. So they sold DigiTech to Court. But Tony Peppers is saying here in the chat that Tom Cram, who was I'll explain Tom Cram here in a second. Tom Cram is working there again. So DigiTech are coming back. Now, Tom Cram was the guy, I've talked about this on my channel in the past, because Tom Cram is the guy that, in my opinion, really resurrected DigiTech and DoD. I wouldn't touch a product by either of those brands because I'd had so much bad luck with them over the years. Their quality control had taken a pretty serious nosedive. They were like, cheap versions of Boss, and I don't know. They brought him in, and he, number one, resurrected the DoD brand, which had been defunct for a decade and a half or so at that point, and came back out with he did stuff like the and I don't have any of my DigiTech stuff in here, but like the Gunslinger MOSFET Overdrive and the Dirty Robot, which is going for stupid money on the used market right now. He's the guy that designed all of those pedals. They let him go, and he has since started his own brand, Spiral Effects, I think is the name of it. But that is pretty cool. If he is a Samsung, not LG, Samsung. Thank you, Tony. But if he is back with DigiTech again, that is kick-ass news, because you're going to see some really, really cool stuff coming out again, and I'm excited. And by the way, if you don't follow Tom Cram on Facebook, you should, because he's absolutely hilarious. So interesting, very interesting.
Well, it sounds like an excuse for me to get another whammy pedal at some point.
I loaned mine out to a buddy of mine here just last week, and it was interesting that he had, because I've got a Whammy 5. Interesting that he had asked me to do it, asked me to borrow it. But of course, I'm cool with it. But it was weird because I just happened to be thinking to myself, I saw it sitting on the shelf, like, I really need to do a video on that pedal, just because it's one of those things. I've used it for one thing. It has one use, and all the cover bands that I played in, it's almost a given that we're going to play "Killing in the Name" by Rage Against the Machine. And you got to have one people to play that solo. That's like the one thing that I've had to have that pedal for. But I've kind of wanted to sit down, plug it back in, and figure out have I progressed enough as a guitar player that I can get more use out of it? So, but it's not currently in my possession, so that's going to have to wait.
Something for the new year.
There you go. Yeah. Something for the new year, exactly. What do you got? What do you got coming up on your channel? Anything noteworthy?
Well, I've got 2 more videos. I've been cranking stuff out lately, trying to get it out before Christmas, and I've got 2 more videos that I'm going to put out before Christmas. And then I'll probably have about a week where I don't release anything. And I've got some stuff on my other channel, which is like my cars and airplanes channel, which that's kind of, it's not as big of, I have priority. Although I recently got monetized on that channel. So there we go.
Did you?
Yeah. So I'll make a solid $30 off that channel. And but I've got a video on that I'm finishing up. And and then there's stuff in the new year. Talking about boutique stuff, there's a combo amplifier that I'm going to be checking out probably in January, which I think falls in the boutique category, tube combo.
Right.
Should be pretty cool. And then there's a whole bunch of other videos that I've just had, like, when I get done with this other stuff, I'm going to work on this, or, things that are just more things that I kind of want to do that don't have anything to do with seasonal stuff or anything like that.
Just
there's
like
like
cue.
yeah, totally. There's like a couple of free plugins that I stumbled across that sound really good. And they're free, which is perfect for my channel, right? Affordable.
Right.
Yeah. And then I did some people might have already seen some of it, but I did an interview with Chris Impellitteri, the shred guitar player. And it's
I
like,
didn't see that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. Like the interviews sometimes don't get as big of a reception as the other stuff, but it's like a 2-hour interview or something. And so I'm breaking it up into different sections, and I've released 2 of them so far, but I've got a few more sections to put out.
That's smart. I'm surprised YouTube didn't. I mean, I've got the alert set on your channel for, to send me, anytime you upload something, but I don't recall that one coming through. But, you and I both know YouTube does that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you got coming out that's, anything exciting coming up that you could tell us about now?
I have I don't want to spoil it because it's something I'm pretty excited about. But I have a holiday related holiday/Christmas related video coming out tomorrow. It's a short video, only about I think it's less than 5 minutes. But I hope that everybody gets something out of it. Kind of a it's a funny / feel good video. That's all I'm going to say. That'll be up tomorrow morning. I've got another comedy based video with you're familiar with Alan Barnes of Geargasms.
Oh yeah. I didn't not the name, but the channel.
Yeah. I've got a collaboration video with him going up here. I don't know. That was probably gonna be a few weeks out. A couple other gear demos, pedal demos and stuff. I do have a couple of pedal companies and amp companies that they're sending me some stuff to demo that I'm waiting on. Some of them, most of it hadn't arrived yet. But once there'll be plenty of gear to demo, and I think I still got a few things laying around, from some other brands that I haven't gotten to yet. But yeah, beyond that, that's pretty much what I've got on my docket at the moment.
Nice. Well, I've got see where it is. I'll grab something real quick here and give you guys a little preview of something I got coming up because it's kind of interesting. So let me grab
Please.
this.
Well, let's see. I see some. While Max is doing that, I do see some stuff in the chat. Flux has looks like the same question for both of us. We'll address that here in a minute. And to anybody that I have not said hello to yet, such as Dan C, Dwight Bailey, Robbie Stingle, Spidgeby, Paul Fuchs, and Jason Daniel Stone. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us here today. Let's see. What do you got?
So this is a guitar that I'm going to be.
I can't see the headstock, but I like it already.
Going to be reviewing very soon.
Is that Vigier?
No. This is a Volgoa.
Interesting.
And look at this. So it's got the wood binding on here.
Uh-huh.
Got the roasted maple neck.
Wow.
And it's got these 24 frets, humbucker single hum, kind of a 2-point vintage style, 2-point Strat type trim.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing which is kind of interesting, well, there's two things that are really interesting about it. One of them, it has a resin fretboard. You see how shiny?
That was the next thing I was going to ask you, is what that fretboard material is. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. Weird. Almost looked like a painted or a gloss finish fretboard.
It's not though. Yeah, that's what it looks like. I mean, it looks like it's been sprayed with gloss, but it's not. It's just the material. It's this it's resin material. So
wow.
And it has these rounded ball end frets that I talk about so much that are on some, like the ear guitars and stuff.
That's become a feature that a lot of people I've noticed they look pretty hard for a guitar that has that kind of fret dressing on it nowadays. We got Fender to thank for that, I think.
Yeah. So what what would you guess? How much do you think this guitar costs?
Well, since you're bringing it up, I was going to keep that to myself because I was going to wait for the video. But if you're asking me that, at a glance, I would guess it's probably going to be somewhere in the $800 to $1,000 range. But based on the look on your face, you were going to tell me that it's far less than that.
Yes, indeed, it is. It is far less. And I don't know anything much about this brand. I was on Amazon shopping for a Christmas gift.
Right.
And somehow they know that I like guitars, right? So they show me all the guitars.
Mm.
and so I saw this one on here, and I bought this for $178.
You're kidding me.
I looked back a few days later, and it was on sale for $149. So I didn't even get a good deal on it.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So
wow.
And it comes with a mediocre gig bag.
Really?
Yeah. So I, of course, being Guitar Max, I could not resist such an incredible value, and also the fretboard it's very interesting. Super smooth. Yeah, and 24 frets. I mean, you can shred on this thing. Now it says Valgoa since 1986.
Valgo? Is it Valgo or Van Gogh?
I've never heard of this brand before, so I don't know.
Is it Valgo or Van Gogh?
VO. Valgoa.
Okay.
VO.
Okay, because I have an acoustic guitar. I think that video has already gone up, but I have an acoustic guitar from a brand that was about in that same price range called Van Gogh. Right. There's also very, very similar quality.
Yeah. So, and people are asking in the chat, well, how does it play? How does it sound? How does it play? And those are very good questions. And in order to answer those questions, you're going to have to watch the video and watch my video, which is going to come out in just 2 or 3 days from now.
Okay. I will. I have it on my calendar.
And they have there's a red color and they have a blue color also, and they have the hum single hum, and then they have another version which is just 2 humbuckers. So there's a few options, right? But they're all about the same.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
And hashtag not sponsored. I have no connection with the company.
I can't believe it.
I bought it.
I can't believe that thing's $150. That's insane.
Crazy.
Well, moving on, there is a user in the chat named Flux who has asked each of us, what is your dream amp head right now?
My hair here. So dream amp head right. That's tough.
I probably have 2, maybe a third. The third, though, is one that I just is one of those that I would really, really like to have, but I don't know that I call it a dream amp head. What do you
Well,
think? You
this
go
is going
first.
to sound ridiculous, but so I don't have one. I mean, okay. Well, I'll take that back. Um, you know, okay. So the reason I hesitate on this is I have an amp that I love, and it's hard to. I love the sound of the amp so much that I really don't feel the need to get another amp. And also there are new amps that I really want to try, but I can't say they're my dream amp because I haven't tried them. I don't really know what they sound like. Maybe they suck, right?
Right.
But if someone presented me with a Soldano SLO 100, I would not reject that amplifier. I mean,
Right.
usually the sound that I am looking for in my head is what that amplifier sounds like.
Yep.
But here's the thing: I have, and people are going to call me crazy, and they're going to say you're just shilling for the company or whatever. But no, this is true. My Bugera Infinium 1990,
Mm-hmm.
I love the sound of that amplifier. It sounds
That
so good, and it's got a half power switch, and it's got a line output, it's got an effects loop, it's got everything you want, and it sounds incredible.
and it's
And
basically just about a 1-to-1 clone of that thing, if I'm not mistaken.
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I have A-B'd those amps,
Have you?
and they are similar, but they
Mm-hmm.
don't sound the same. And the Bugera, and it's the Infinium, which is the later version of it.
Right.
The first generation also sounded good, but it was
Unreliable.
completely unreliable. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Infinium version actually works for an extended period of time, and it sounds different. It sounds different than the Marshall. It has a more focused tone. The Marshall can sound a little fuzzy sometimes,
Right.
depending on how you have it set up. So I mean, the only issue is it's a big, heavy loud tube amplifier, and so in some situations it's hard to use if you don't want to be real loud and that kind of stuff. And I have it hooked up to an attenuator and all that. But yeah, I love the sound of it. I mean, I love it so much I bought it twice. Right, like I had it,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget what happened. I had I was like getting a lot of heads. I'm like I should get rid of some of this stuff. I got rid of it, one of the original ones, and then I missed it, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get another one. And so I bought another one. So
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, but a Soldano is hard to.
If you're into
I
this,
mean, if I had to pick a dream amplifier, like an amplifier that I wish I had that I don't have, that would be my choice.
if you're into that, and it's guys like you that really seem to appreciate that amp, because I mean, it's always the guys that are really into the shred progressive style of genres that love the SLO. There's more people than that love the SLOs, of course, but those are the people who really seem to appreciate. Eddie Van Halen, for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge record, that's what that was, all of it. So,
Yeah.
And they've been around for quite a while after, since, prior to that, they're basically hot rodded Marshalls.
Yeah, sure.
So, my dream amp
How about you?
I've got two. Well,
Okay.
I'll start with three. The first one being, an amp it's not really one of my dream amp heads. One that I really wish that I've always wanted, would be the Orange Thunderverb 200. Because that's one of like the heaviest amps I've ever heard, and it's discontinued now. So I mean they don't make it anymore. I think the popularity of the Rocker Verb, kind of made. I'm assuming what happened is that made their need to keep the Thunderverb in their product lineup obsolete, right? So So they ended up discontinuing the Thunderbird. But I always preferred the Thunderbird over the Rockerbird by a mile. But the two amps that I've really always really wanted to have, believe it or not, as much as I love it, I've never owned a Marshall JCM 800, and I would love to, like an 80s, not a reissue, but an original one. I'd love to have a JCM 800, and I would also really like to have a diesel. A lot of diesel amps I like, but the Herbert's always been.
Oh yeah.
Probably my favorite.
Like a VH4, like a diesel VH4 would be great.
The VH4, that's their flagship, and that's the one that everybody seems to want. But I've always liked the Herbert better. Don't ask me why. I just have. Yeah, I heard one time when I was at the store Guitar Center. I had there's a buddy of mine, who was a really really high end collector. This guy had, some of the hardest gear to find. He had connections to, he owned a couple of Jeff Hanneman's guitars, because he was buddies with Jeff Hanneman's Guitar Tech after Jeff Hanneman passed away. So he was able to get, he had those kinds of connections. He was able to get a hold of that kind of stuff, right? And one time he brought in and sold us a diesel Herbert, and, not just the head, but, the full stack, 2 cabs with it.
Wow.
And, I set it up and plugged it in, and I was like, oh my God, this thing is unbelievable. It had a price tag on it that I couldn't have even begun to, I would have had to sell body parts to be able to pay for it. But it was, I've never forgotten that experience. No, I've won one ever since, wow. So maybe it'll happen one day. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Who knows? One thing I did want to ask you, do you find yourself, and stylistically, I think we have some similarities, some playing similarities and some, there's also some differences. I mentioned before, I think you're a far more skilled guitar player than I am. But do you find yourself using less, dialing back the gain as you progress as a guitar player at all?
Not too much.
Really?
I maybe on rhythm playing.
Mm-hmm.
I probably do. But not a whole lot.
Really?
I still like that, still like that crunch, man.
Mm-hmm. I do too, but it used to be I sat down and I would dime the gain on every single amp that I plugged into, whether I needed to or not. That was just what I did, and I do still like the sound of it. But I find for my own, my own purposes, I do find myself dialing it back more and more because I'm able to get more of the sound that I'm looking for, with technique, and not the technique. I don't buy into that, tone is in the hands bullshit. I think it's total crap. If it were, I think if that were a thing, then, the Steve Vais and the Eddie Van Halen's and all those, the greatest players in the world wouldn't care so much about what amp they were playing through, Yeah. So, I ain't buying it, I do get the argument, but that said, I think, myself, I'm finding myself, and again, I guess the amp depends too, but, dialing it back a lot more than I once did, which is, a sign, I think that's a sign of growth as a musician for me, by the way. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I don't think maybe a little bit on rhythm, but not on, I have not dialed it back on lead. I think one thing though I have done is with the, like your EQ settings and stuff, I have changed on that a little bit, in that I used to set up a really, what's a good way to say it? Like a tone that is, like I always wanted a very different kind of tone.
Right.
Or a tone that really stood out. Now, it's more likely that I'm just going to set stuff at 12 o'clock, like across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Find where the amp just sounds kind of middle of the road, kind of neutral as far as the EQ. And then, yeah, I've changed my, I adjust my picking a little bit to sort of change the tone of the amp a little bit. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Right.
And again, it's more of a thing with my rhythm playing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I did a video not too long ago, earlier this year, where I was talking about Akira Takasaki from Loudness, and he has a very particular style during for his rhythm playing, where he's basically doing like pinch harmonic, pig squeal pinch harmonic stuff that you would typically do on single notes, but he applies it to entire chords, and so it gets this very squawky kind of harmonic kind of sound to his rhythm playing. And so I've experimented a lot with things like that, or obviously where you pick, in relation to the pickups, like picking down by the bridge, or I mean, if you're picking even over the fretboard, you get this really round bell-like tone.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like people don't experiment with that enough, and so I've been trying to experiment with that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, sometimes I like the amp to have a very kind of, in terms of the EQ, to have a very kind of almost flat sound, like a very neutral sound, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because before when I was like a teenager, then I was like scooping it, right? And
Right.
if I hear that now, I cringe, And
Yeah.
so then I was like,
Too.
I want all the mids, man. I'd like the
Yeah.
mids are cranked all the way up, and then I'm like using a pedal and boosting the mids more. That I was all about mids. And now I've kind of like, okay, some mids. I do like mids, but I don't need
Mm-hmm.
all of them, that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the exact same way. When I've said this numerous times. If you were a kid in the '90s guitar, I mean, chances are, this was your pedal.
yeah,
This is the anniversary version of the Metal Zone, but the Metal Zone was your pedal. And I still have original my original Metal Zone, and that was how I dialed it. Bass and treble all the way up, mids all the way down, gain all the way up. And that was how I dialed it. And I did, I wasn't alone. But again, as you just mentioned, as my ear has developed over time, there, there's I can't stomach that tone anymore. It's a fun thing to mess around with it. In the bedroom, I guess, when I was, by yourself, but, in an actual musical context, it's useless. So,
right, yeah,
mid-range instrument needs to have mid-range in it. So, so I did the same thing you did, and, went the total opposite end of the spectrum. Now I dime the mids on everything, not everything, but, a lot more than I once did. So,
right, yeah,
you know,
yeah, and the thing I'm talking about, like having a flat EQ, that's more for rhythm stuff. But still, when I do lead stuff, I'm still like, give me the mids, man, give me the mids. I still like that on leads. Yeah.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do you still use any of your, you got like any old gear that you've had for decades and you still hang on to it because you love it and pull it out every now and again, anything like that?
Let's
While
see.
you answer that, I'm going to get up for a second and go grab a charger cable for my gimbal here. I'll be right back, but I'm listening.
Sure. Yeah. I don't have too much of that stuff in terms of gear, like pedals or even amps. I guess my amp stuff has gotten a lot better, and I just like the I just like the the new. I just like the newer stuff a lot better in terms of
Sure.
amps. But
Mm.
I do have, like, I have an old Charvel. I have an old guitar that I've had since I was maybe 19 or something like that. So, and I still have that guitar, and it, like one of the saddles is cracked on the bridge and that kind of stuff, and But it's, I still love that guitar, and I open the case and look at it and think of days past every once in a while.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, I've got plenty of it. I had all kinds of stuff that I just didn't want to get rid of anything forever. All of a sudden, my gear collection grew to just astronomical, proportions. Now it's to the point that I mean, I literally have too much. I don't have space for all of it anymore. And, so now I'm finally selling off a few things, and, is what it is. So, but it's stuff that I've come to grips with. That everything I've sold is stuff that I realized I'm not going to miss it anymore. So,
yeah, I mean, I've got.
is that your for sale pile?
That's my extra pile. I mean, I've got all this stuff up here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a big thing on the floor here.
Yep.
Oh, and you can't even see it, but like over here against the wall, I've got some hard cases, like in a row. They're all full. And then I've got, these are my wife's weights down here. And when she's not using them, I stack them all and I have a storage unit, and there's stuff in there. Like I've got a double neck guitar in there that I can't fit anywhere else. And I mean, it's, there's stuff in the closet. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable. It's a great problem to have, but I'm kind of getting sick of it. And
it is.
I wish there were reliable ways. I would love to talk with you about this. Right? I wish there were like easy, reliable ways to give stuff away to people that would be like a good way, because you can't, you talk to somebody on the internet or like a YouTube comment, and you don't know, do they really need it, right? Or are they just going to take it and sell it immediately? Or it's like, because people, I don't know if this happens with you, but people send me these stories all the time where it's like, my grandma died, and then my other grandma died, and then my third grandma died, and I would just really like a guitar, right? And like, I get things like that a lot where I'm pretty sure that they just want me to give them something. But it's like, if in the right position, like if somebody really does need something, like I would like to give them something, but just getting connected with the right person, or some kind of charity where it would make a difference, or a school or something. And there are all of these things where it's like, oh, well, it's easy. Just go to your local. It's like, no. It's never as easy as saying it in one sentence, right? And, I've tried, I think I live in Los Angeles. Like there's got to be, like, I thought there'd be like a jazz guitar program at like a school or something, and I could donate some guitars.
Mm-hmm.
There's no jazz guitar program. I'm like, what? Like, what's, it's weird stuff, and so I'm trying to figure out a way to get, a good way to get rid of some of this stuff. And I could just like donate it to Goodwill or something. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right. If you donate it to Goodwill, what's going to happen is, they're going to list it on their website, and some guitar flipper is going to buy it for a stupid good deal and then wind up flipping it. If you want to avoid that, which, this sounds like that's what you want to do. There are a couple of things I kind of, I get the same people in the comments every now and again that are, they're trying to wiggle something away from me for free just because. But every now and again, there's somebody that I had a viewer recently. He'd mentioned the same thing. His house was broken into during the COVID lockdown and stole all of his gear. And now with current inflation and all that kind of stuff, that it's made it even increasingly more difficult for him to buy anything to replace it. So just recently I shipped him a guitar. I paid the shipping and everything. It was one that was given to me, so it was only in. It just it was somebody that was more than willing to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, right? And I think we can, sometimes it's easier to tell who those people are than others. But if you're actually wanting to donate to like an actual music program, if you can't find a there's a bunch of, you're probably familiar with Share the Music, the nonprofit that I've always supported on my channel. But they're local here in Indiana. So but there's charities like that all over the place. The other thing that you might check into is even the larger school districts and the like lower income communities. A lot of those music programs, districts themselves are not willing to invest a lot of money into the music. And a lot of those places are absolutely willing to accept donations of guitars and stuff like that. Guitars and brass instruments and string instruments. So what you might want to do is find, one of those, call the administration office of one of those school districts and talk to them about it. So, or figure out if you can get in touch with one of the music teachers. Those are the people. Those are the music instructors. Actually, those are the people on the front lines that are going to know the answers to those questions. They're going to tell you if we need it or not. So
yeah, it's a weird. I mean, maybe just the area that I'm in is kind of the issue, but I've tried to do exactly that, like where I'm at here. I've tried to go to, like inner city locations and that kind of stuff. They don't have music programs. Yeah. Like the focus is all on sports. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, am I going to go out to Calabasas where they have music programs, but they don't need the money, right? Like they don't need donations. So but I don't know, maybe I just need to go to maybe I need to try San Diego or something a little further out or something like that. Somebody was saying, I saw a comment, Guitars for Vets. Is that a real program? Like, is that a program that already exists, or is that something that they're suggesting to set up?
If Jim Woodard is the guy that posted that, and if anybody would know, it would be him. Jim is retired Navy, I believe. And he's out on the East Coast, but he would, I would put stock into that. So, Jim, if you have any information on Guitars for Vets,
if that's a program that already exists, like I would, I would do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get the info and send it to you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Great.
Yep. Let's see. There's another thing I was gonna. How much time do we got? We've been cooking like an hour and a half here.
Yeah,
you still got time. I'm having
a blast. We spent like 45 minutes before that, like trying to get this working, right? So we're hanging out all day long.
Yeah, I think 45 minutes is very, very generous, but because I think it was a hell of a lot longer than that, due to my my technologically challenged internet. Jim, I wish you know how all this shit works. I wish that you were. I should have just called you, but anyway. But I guess how much are you okay on time?
I'm fine on time. Yeah, I got a snack here. I'm doing good.
Good deal. Awesome. Good. I'm having a blast, by the way. I know what I was going to ask you. I never see you talk about this in your videos, and I see it in the background just about every single time. We've talked a lot about budget gear and and inspirations and all that kind of stuff. But and we both have a very strong appreciation for that. But when there it is. That ain't budget gear, my friend. That is I don't know if that's the flagship of your amp collection, but that thing is pretty stinking cool. And Dan C is in the chat saying, "What is that?" What I know about that amp, Metaltronics, those amps are all designed and built by the famous Lee Jackson.
Yes, and, indeed. Says Lee Jackson down here.
Yeah. That is a Lee Jackson amp brand, and those things are those ain't cheap. those aren't they're not cheap, and they're hard to find.
Yeah, now they are. Yeah.
Yeah, real hard to find.
Yeah, so this is an amp I wanted. I wanted this for a long time. And yeah, this is a Lee Jackson Metaltronics M1000.
Yep.
And I will say that it's a 100 watt tube head. And people argue about the perception of volume and how loud it is and all this stuff. This is without question the loudest amp I have ever heard in my life. It's painful. It's like
when was it built?
What's that?
When was it made? Is that like early 90s?
No, like 88, I think, late 80s.
Okay, so
yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the insider secret with this amplifier. It doesn't work.
Oh. Okay. Would you? That's funny. So, seriously, it's just it's a paperweight.
It used to work. So
okay.
When I bought it, I wanted one for a long time because I saw I saw these old advertisements with like Akira Takasaki from Loudness. I keep talking about him, but
yeah.
And this is like late 80s, and he's got a wall of them and everything. And I'm like, oh, what is that amplifier? That's such a cool amp, right? So I wanted one for a long time. I finally found one, on the used market, and I bought it, and I got it. And wow, what an amplifier. It's so loud, and it's got all these weird controls on it. Like it's got, stage 2.
Right.
What does that do? I don't know. And you can pull it. It's a push-pull. You got stage 2, and you've got mid-shift thin and mid-shift thick, right? And it's got all kinds of, master 1, master 2, and
right.
It's got a whole bunch of weird controls on it. And when I first got it, in fact, it was a funny thing. I got the amp, and I had a rehearsal lockout at the time, right? And I took the amplifier, I set it on top of my existing amplifier, which was a Bugera like 6262 or something.
Right.
And when I set it on top of that amplifier died. Okay. So it's like the Metaltronics was so powerful, just setting it on top of the other amplifier killed the other amplifier, right? And so the Metaltronics was fantastic, and it was a cool amp, sounded great, takes pedals really well. I used it, and I played some live shows with it. And then around 2015, I stopped doing live like I used to have a solo band where I'd go out doing like better stuff. About 2015, I stopped doing that. So I didn't use the amp for a while. And then when I plugged it back in, nothing. Yeah. So basically it needs to be fixed and repaired and that kind of stuff. And Lee Jackson is still around, and I think I could probably get a hold of him and ship him the amp or something.
Oh yeah. No, he's I think he's got a Facebook page, and you can get in touch with him.
Yeah. So but yeah, it's such a cool amplifier, but it's kind of I mean, it ends up. It's such a cool amplifier, and it's an amplifier that I love, and so I like to have it close to me, right?
Yeah.
But people are always asking me, dude, when are you going to review the Metaltronics, man? And that's why I haven't done it. Is it's broken. So there we go.
Dude, I get people ask me about that all the time. Hey, does Max ever use the Metaltronics? He's had that thing sitting in the background of his videos for a long time. I know it, and I know what they are, and I'm familiar with them. They're cool, but I don't know. that's kind of one of the mysteries of the Guitar Max channel
Yeah.
until now.
Yeah. Now you know. Now you know.
Yeah. But I get it. I've got here, you can't see it, but here next to me, I've got a PV 6505 combo. The lead channel on it sounds fine. The rhythm channel, I don't know. I think I blew a preamp tube or something in it years ago, and I've never gotten around to going and getting it fixed. Same. And I've everything else I think I own, I think works okay, but I've got a rack of 100-watt heads sitting right next to me, and on top of the Marshall and one or two others back there. I'm in a standard 12 by 13 foot bedroom. I mean, what the hell do I need 100 watts in here for?
Right.
So it doesn't make that much sense. Sometimes I do plug them in, but but I rarely plug them into the cab. So the mic up the cab, if I use, it's usually with a DI when I do use them. So, and I sometimes get a little skeptical about running 100 watts, or in the case of, I've got a Marshall Mode 4 sitting next to me, that was 350, so in case of running 350 watts into the Captor X, I'm not sure it can handle it. That's a lot of power to attenuate.
Another amp I have that it's in my storage unit, but people might have seen it in the background a couple of years ago. I have one of the Fender MH500, the Fender metalhead.
Do you really?
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Wow. Those are cool.
And that one is like when you set it up like at full power, it's like 550 watts.
Yeah, it's redonkulously loud. I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, and they had matching cabs. I only have the head. I don't have the matching cabs or anything with it. Which someday I'd like to get the whole set. But yeah, that's a fun one too.
Have you seen that video on Pete Thorne's channel? It's Pete and a bunch of other YouTube guys and gals. Like I think Mary. I can't believe I forgot her last name. Thank you. Yeah, Mary Spender, and Leo Maracchioli from I think Frog Leap Studios, bunch of the guys from that pedal show. They're in a music shop. I think it was over in they were all attending a guitar show, trade show over in Germany. And so Pete sets up this 100-watt plexi and dimes the whole thing, and everybody's plugging into it for this, to a dimed out plexi for the first time ever. I remember Trey from Gear Gods in particular. He strummed like one chord. He's like, "Oh my God, it hurts! It's so loud."
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember, like Andertons did a video one time where they got like a dB meter and everything. And they set it up, kind of a somewhat scientific test, and they had all these different 100-watt tube heads, and they dimed all of them, and then they would measure like how loud it actually is. And I think the Yngwie Malmsteen signature head was the loudest.
Really?
Yeah. Great.
Yngwie
Malmsteen. It would be his.
Yeah. Have you ever seen him live?
A few times actually.
Have you? Yeah, he's. I haven't seen him live in forever, and he's always got a wall of Marshalls on stage with him. I don't know how many of them are actually plugged in, but I'd be willing to bet at least 2 of them are running at any given time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised. Ian's Guitar Shack. Let me get caught up on some folks here in the chat. Ian's Guitar Shack. His comment says, "Take Robert on a plane ride next time, Max."
Let's do it.
Yeah. How does that work? Do you own a plane yet, or already, or I know that you did earn your pilot's license, if I'm not mistaken, or at least you're still you're really close to it.
Well, no, I do have a pilot's license, so but I don't own a plane, unfortunately. I wish I did. And I might be able to make it happen, but no, I don't own one. So when I go flying, this sounds strange to people that are not familiar with this, but you can rent airplanes like you rent cars.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I fly one, I rent one essentially.
Okay. I didn't know how that worked.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, if you know, next time you do that, there's a municipal airport, not 20 minutes from me,
Oh,
so
nice.
if you make a trip up here to, to central Indiana, we'll, pick me up and I'll bring the cameras with me and we'll see what kind of stupid shit we can get into.
Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
that'd be entertaining. Oh, what else we got in here? Guitar for Kubayath, another user in the chat says guitars for vets is entirely genuine.
Okay.
So sounds like that is probably what you might want to look into for demoing or for donating unused gear.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So, like I said, I'll get that info from Jim and send that over to you.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions that I see in the chat that we didn't get to?
Yeah, we can answer like the the meaning of the universe and stuff. We could figure out all the world's problems here if people would just ask us the right questions.
I think we're pretty close, to be honest with you. I mean, between your channel and my channel, I think we're okay. Well, maybe your channel. My channel is, full of a lot more stupid than yours. But a lot of that's kind of just my dry sense of humor. What's Max's favorite airplane? Interesting. That's a good question.
Well, I mean, there's like there's a lot of. I mean, there's you could answer it like, oh, the SR-71 and stuff like that. But like, I don't know, something kind of realistic. There's it's one called a Beach Model 18, Beach Model 18, which is an old twin engine airplane, and it's just kind of the right size to where it's still like a small-ish airplane, but it's like an airplane that you could take your friends and a bunch. You could like throw a bunch of luggage in there and go on a little trip and that kind of stuff. And it has this wonderful like old kind of like 1940s Art Deco sort of vibe to it, which I really dig.
Right.
So, yeah. So something like that, or a Beechcraft Staggerwing, which is kind of similar, but that's a single engine biplane.
Have you ever been to Washington, D.C.?
No, I have not.
You should make a trip out there specifically to go to the. I've been to Washington like 20 times, so I mean I've seen a lot of stuff out there. But there is a Smithsonian museum that's off the beaten path from everything else. This one's out towards Dulles Airport. It's a aerospace. It's called the Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Air and Space Museum.
Okay.
And it is, I mean, just about every single plane you can imagine is in there. But I mean, it's a big place. But there is, I mean, it's an airplane museum. And there's airplanes on top of airplanes. You would have a blast in that. I mean, we spent hours there, and I don't have the same kind of appreciation for it that you do. They have, famous planes. I think probably the most famous thing that they had in there that I could tell was they had the NASA shuttle Discovery.
Oh wow! Okay.
That was retired fairly recently. They managed to acquire that. They have that, and they also have it. They were still getting it ready for they had this like observation area of like some of their behind the scenes stuff. Some things that they have. They don't have out on display yet, but they're getting ready to put out on display, that kind of thing. And in there, they had, I think, they had a legitimate X-wing fighter from that was used in one of the Star Wars sets.
Oh, cool!
Pretty kick-ass. So
yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. So if you ever get a chance to take a trip out to Washington, you need to make sure you have time to go there because you specifically would love it.
Okay, I'll put it on my list. I did a really fun road trip earlier this year, like in the summertime or something. And I drove from, it was actually airplane related. I won't go into the whole story, but I drove from Tennessee back to California. And driving
Okay.
through Alabama, in Huntsville, Alabama, they've got the space, they've got the like Space Command Center over there, and they have an entire Saturn V rocket on display there, and you see it from miles away. You're driving down the freeway, and you see this thing coming up over the horizon. It's like, what is that? I thought it was some weird, like, I thought it was like a skyscraper or something when I first saw it. And then it was like, it's a rocket, man. It's amazing.
Yeah. I did. My dad's stepmom recently retired to Florence, Alabama, which is actually a hotbed music hub. Some really famous music studios are in that area. But we went down there to visit them here just a few months ago, and what I learned, because it's only about it's like an hour or so outside of Huntsville, and Huntsville, Alabama, is apparently a hotbed for technology right now. A lot of tech companies and industry stuff like you're talking about are all going to Huntsville. So that's and I knew that I think it's a NASA facility that you're talking about. They're pretty well known for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah. A few more questions here in the chat. Zach Lee is asking, Max, who does your guitar repairs?
Well, I mean, a lot of stuff I do myself. If it's like electronic stuff or something, I do that myself. I've taken the AIO shop, All-in-One Guitars shop, that I've talked about many times. They do the Wolf guitars and the AIO guitars.
Oh, I forgot they're local to you. Yeah.
Yeah, they're local to me. So I've taken a few things there. Like I had a nylon, I had like a nylon string guitar with a piezo pickup, and that was kind of screwed up, and it was a little bit out of my, whatever comfort level to repair. And so I took that to them, and they fixed it. There's also a guy, James Shotwell, who's local here in LA, and he fixes stuff for me sometimes. But he also is out of town a lot of the time, so sometimes he's not available. But yeah, this is not too, most of it I do myself. So, but I'm not doing like wood repairs on acoustic guitars or anything like that. So it's not that much stuff that I have to fix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I some of those minor stuff, setups and restrings and stuff like that, I take care of myself. But that buddy of mine that I loaned my whammy pedal to, I said, in exchange for that, here, put these pickups into this Jackson guitar that I've been putting off forever and don't want to do myself.
Yeah.
So my regular guy that I used to take stuff to, he's now all the way over on the other side of town from me. So it's I haven't figured out who to go to locally for that kind of stuff yet. It's closer to me, but fortunately I haven't really needed anything recently either. But any serious guitar player, it's important to have a good tech handy. Somebody that you can go to. Do you ever I don't know if you've ever gotten a chance to tour any. There's a lot of guitar and amp companies out there in your part of the world. I know we already talked about Soldano. I think they're out there. Friedman's out there. Among others. I don't know if you've ever gotten to interact with any of those. Going to see any of those places or gotten to know anybody out there. I guess as a dude living in the Midwest, I've kind of got this conception that all the big name popular guitar people in California all know each other. So
oh yeah, man, we all hang out together all the time, on weekends.
Yeah. Never mind the fact there's 10 million people in that city, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's like you meet somebody from Canada and be like, oh hey, I know another person from Canada. Maybe know each other. Yeah. No, the answer is no. I don't. I haven't really talked with those guys.
Well, what the hell,
Yeah. There's not even. There's only even. There's there's only even like a few other guitar YouTube people that I know personally, like in the area.
Is that right?
Yeah, and which is kind of stupid. I mean, maybe I should make more of an effort. I mean, people are kind of cagey sometimes about that stuff, but it's
Right.
yeah, maybe I should make more of an effort. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. I've,
sure.
I don't, because I guess there's YouTube is an interesting thing, because there's, I mean, yeah, I followed a lot of channels at least at one point in time or another. Um, but I mean, the actual creators of some of those channels that I actually, personally interact with, like yourself, is a much shorter list.
Mm,
You know, and but there seem to be other creators that seem to know everybody.
right.
So I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of a weird, you know, social community thing, and I'm certainly no expert on any of that stuff. But uh, you understand what I'm saying? Do you ever notice
Oh
any of
yeah.
that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I, I kind of. I mean, I understand it. Why people are guarded. Um, because you get, I'm kind of like a mid-level guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm not one of the big guys, guitar YouTube wise.
Mm,
So I think maybe, but I mean, you talk to somebody like Paul Davids or, the what's that guy, samurai guitarist, Stephen or something. Um, you talk to
yeah.
some of those
Steve,
guys,
I think is his name. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like I understand why they're guarded because they're constantly being approached by people who want something from them, and it's
Yeah.
like, and they want something from them, and they're not really offering much in exchange. And even I get a lot of that stuff. It's like,
Mm,
hey, can I send you this thing that's not very good, and I want you to tell everybody that it's great. Like,
yeah.
no, I'm not going to do that. It's like,
Right.
but people ask me for that kind of stuff all the time, and so guys who are at that upper, that higher level, I
Right.
I think they just get bombarded with it. So
Hmm.
even if like I came up with a really fantastic cross promotional like video idea or something, if I go to Paul Davids or somebody like that who's got millions of subscribers,
Yeah.
he's
What's he up to?
probably
Two,
not
three
going to be
million or
very
something
receptive.
stupid? Yeah.
And I understand why, but at the same time, it makes it so people get kind of, there's bad sides to being closed off to things too. So
Hmm.
I try to,
Right.
I don't know, I try to be open to, I try to at least consider, uh, what
Sure.
what people approach me about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I because even I get some, a little bit of that stuff that you're talking about. And I'm, me being, smaller than you, I'm still on the smaller end of the spectrum. I mean, I'm a little bit more willing to, to in the instance like a small pedal builder or something like that. I mean, I'm a little bit more willing to demo, something for those people without, expecting too much in return. But there's criteria that I need to see
Hmm.
in order to say yes to, even those situations as well. Uh,
There's been a few situations where uh, a brand new company has come to me,
yeah.
and it's like a company that has zero brand recognition and that kind of stuff, and they have their flagship product, their first thing, and like there's one company in particular that I'm thinking of, and they sent this thing to me, and they said, "Oh, please, will you review it? And we just want an honest review, and it would just be great, to get the word out, that kind of stuff." And I'm like, and I said yes initially,
Mm-hmm.
and they sent this thing to me, and I checked it out, and it was terrible, and it was like it was really really bad, and I went back to them and I said, "Look, guys, if I come out now when no one knows about your company and I give you an honest review and I tell everybody what's wrong with your product, it's going to kill your company before it even gets started, right?
Right.
Because the first thing that people will ever hear about that company is that they make a bad product.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I've got this huge reach or something, but it's just like they're getting started on the wrong foot, right?
Yeah.
And so I went back to them. I said, you know, I think it's just a really bad decision for you to do this. I think you guys should do some more work on that. You know, what I personally would recommend is do some more work on this, and here's where you could improve it, blah, 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 you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that situation has happened to me a few times, you know. So I try to, like, I want, but at the same time, right, there's a slightly dishonest, on my part, there's a slightly dishonest side to that, because in a way, it might be more honest to the audience for me to go ahead and do that review.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's like I'd rather that company have a second chance to kind of fix some things and come out and then make a good impression on people. I'd rather do that. I don't know. To me, that's the only way that really accomplishes anything positive or something.
Right.
So but I try to balance those things all the time.
Yeah, and I think every creator kind of runs into that, but I don't think that. I think that even the term itself, the term paid review, is a serious misnomer, because I don't think anybody has ever paid. Well, yeah, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure it's happened, but I mean, most creators that I've interacted with, and spoken to and chatted with and all that kind of stuff, be it in our genre or any other, companies that have sent them a product and paid them to do what they do has been, they're paying me for the video production, they're paying me for all the work that's involved in that, all the, and all the investments and gear and equipment and stuff that I've had to buy over the years in order to do that. I've never taken a dime for anybody to give my opinion. So, I think that that it's another misconception that I see growing more and more is people not being able to trust trust reviews on YouTube, and I get it. I'm not criticizing people who feel that way, but I do think that it is a misconception, my opinion.
I think people get confused between like a sponsorship and that, and what you're, and I would like to get, I haven't really done very many sponsorships, where it's like, this video is brought to you by Squarespace,
Right.
make an easy website, or,
Right.
like I haven't really done much of that, but I might start doing some of it, just because you can get a sponsorship that is unrelated to what the video is actually about, right?
Right.
But I think if you have a sponsorship that's too closely related to what you're talking about in the video, it becomes a little hard for the audience to distinguish, like, what about this is paid and what is not, and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And yeah, the thing you're talking about, like my channel, your channel, all these gear review channels, it's not like you work with one company, right? I mean, it's and like I make a lot of videos about used gear that I find, like stuff that you can't even buy anymore, right? So
yeah, so do I.
So if you let's say you put out a review and it's a negative review, like you just, hey, I got this new guitar and man, this thing was just a pile of crap, like
right.
if you could put out that video and maybe you'll piss off that one company, but that's one of hundreds of companies.
Right.
And doing videos like that, I mean, it's a way. I mean, I don't think people should do it deliberately, but it's a way that the audience knows that you're being genuine, right? So,
sure.
Yeah, but it's no, I don't know. I think there's just a certain kind of person in the audience that is just maybe a bit jaded in general, and they're always going to think that, oh, this person's just being paid to say this. So, to a certain extent, you're never going to be able to get that idea across to everyone.
Right.
That's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So
No.
we do what we can.
If you're going to start a YouTube channel, man, you're going to learn pretty quick. You cannot please everybody.
Yeah.
Nope, it ain't possible.
Yeah, man, that was I talked with Lewis from the Tone King, Lewis.
I saw that. That was a while ago, but I saw those.
Yeah. I talked with him because he's been doing YouTube forever, right?
Yeah,
like
he's got like it's like 15 years or something now. He's been around.
Yeah.
So,
and that was one of the really cool things that he told me, like a great point that he made about like negative comments and stuff.
Mm.
And the negative comments are always the ones that stand out to you when you read them.
Oh yeah. Mm.
Right. And he made such a good point. He says, why would you respond to the negative one? Why would you give them your time if you're not going to respond to the positive ones? Like, why would you reward the person who's saying something bad if you're not going to give attention to someone who's saying something good? And I'm pretty happy with how I deal with criticism and that kind of stuff. Like, I feel pretty good about that. That's something I've worked on for a long time.
Mm.
And I'm used to being insulted, right? And that kind of stuff. But he made such a good point, because it's like you have to resist that urge, to like sit there and like, oh, I'm going to think of the perfect comeback to this guy, right? You have to resist that urge when you're not going to bother to respond to the person that is saying, hey, great job, or I really like your video. So now I try to just give the attention to the people who are like, they might be criticizing me, but it might be something that's helpful. Okay.
Right.
And or the people who are just like going out of their way to say something nice. I try to give those people more attention. And the guys who's like, occasionally I get really creative insults, right? Like somebody said something like, I hope, it was so good. I think I wrote it down somewhere, but basically it was something like, I hope your penis falls off and they make a copy of it in China.
That's a gem right there.
Yeah. I'm going to get that framed, man. That was
that's a gem.
Yeah.
Oh man, I admit, I mean, I've gone both ways with it. There's times that that I really do just actively ignore the trolls. I'm just not in the mood for them. I don't have time for it. I don't have the energy. And then there's other times that that I embrace it. As I'm sure anybody watches my channel knows. I'm not. I've kind of turned putting. I'd like to think anyway that I've put the taken the art of putting trolls on blast and turned it into an art form. That's probably probably my own conception, and probably very, very mistaken, but regardless, that's how I tend to think of it. But yeah, I mean, there's some, and I think there is a big difference between criticism and just going out of your way to be an asshole. There's a big there's one thing that, saying what you should have done was this, and then we would have gotten a better idea about what you were trying to explain here. That is a much that's criticism. That exact same comment saying, you're so stupid you didn't, that you couldn't figure out how to do this, that, and the other. That ain't criticism. That's going out of your way to be a prick. So
yeah, and YouTube was always like putting filters on things in the comments and stuff, and you have to approve certain comments, and I kind of don't like that stuff. Like, I want to see all of it.
I do too,
and even if it's bad, right? Like,
I do too. YouTube, you're right. YouTube filters out a lot of it now, and
yeah, they do. Like, if somebody's swearing at you, they'll usually filter that out.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I want to see it. I want to see all of it, and then. Yeah, but I don't know, like, like an example is, I used to have a really long intro,
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of my videos. You know, I like maybe I'd do a teaser and then I'd have the intro, and the intro was like, I don't know, like 15 to 20 seconds long. It's like 20 seconds long.
Yeah, mine too. I recently shortened mine down by
Yeah,
a third.
and everybody, and I love the intro, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great, and I worked really hard on it, you know. But I
Yep.
was getting all these comments. Oh man, do the intro. I don't want to see the intro. It sucks. Get rid of it. Blah blah blah. And some, you know, some of the comments were mean, and some of them were like, "Oh, you should consider shortening your intro," right? But I got that comment so much, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to shorten the intro, right? And it ultimately made my videos better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always want to, I don't want to be shielded from the criticism,
Sure.
right?
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna cover a couple of questions here from the chat.
Sure.
That Kay Petty, you know, a lot of these are most of these are questions for you. Kay Petty says, Max, what are your thoughts on the Blue Voodoo amps? I know you love them, Robert. I just got a Blue Voodoo BV120. Where are you at on the Blue Voodoo? Are you on the Blue Voodoo train with us?
A little bit. I'm on the like the last car on the train, you know.
All right, okay.
I think they don't deserve the hate that they get.
Agreed.
Yeah, they don't deserve the hate that they get, and they're quite a value. You can usually get them pretty cheap sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you set your, you know, if you twiddle the knobs in certain ways, you can get really cool, really good sounds out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just when you just plug it in and go, you know, they have a very fizzy sound. That's kind of what they're known for. A lot of high end.
Right.
And I think that's a sound that maybe doesn't work with certain pedal combinations and that kind of stuff. So I just feel like they take a little tweaking and work to get a really a thicker, fatter sound out of them. But
right,
you know, people talk about them as if they're the worst tube heads ever or something, and like nowhere near that.
Yeah, I agree. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. There. Oh, where'd my? Where'd I put it? Okay, weird. Totally. Click something. Click the wrong thing on my computer.
Uh-oh.
There we go. Yeah, you know, I've always. I mean, Blue Voodoo was my very first tube amp, so I've always had a soft spot for that amp. But yeah. Fred M says, "Hey Max, should I be looking into getting a BC Rich Gunslinger, or should I just forget about it?"
Yeah, I like gunslingers.
I think they're BC Rich. I mean, I think it's awesome just because it's BC Rich, but you know, they're not for everybody, just like anything else. But you a BC Rich guy at all?
Yeah, I do like. I mean, I've had quite a few.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually have one right now, but I love the Mockingbirds. I've had a couple of Mockingbirds. I've had a couple of Warlocks. I have had one Gunslinger.
Yeah.
The War Beast and some of the more extreme ones, I'm okay without those. But you know, I like the Warlocks, and there's also the Virgin, which has got the two really pointed, like it's a smaller body, but with the two kind of pointed horns.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to call it an SG, but there was two versions of that body style. There was the Virgin, and there was another one called the Virgo. Then Virgo, I think, is the one on the bottom had the cutout.
Oh, the cutout. Yeah.
So
so no, I definitely like some of their stuff. I mean, BC Rich company though has gone through so many ups and downs.
Yeah.
It you know, getting a good one kind of depends on what year it is and that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. And the era that it came from, you know, they seem to be back on the uptick right now. You know, in what I would call a good era. You know, with knowledgeable ownership.
Yeah.
You know, running the show and putting out quality products. You know, they've been a little expensive up till now, but they're now starting to come out with some stuff that's going to be a little bit more affordable, like in the $700-$900 range, as opposed to everything, you know, starting at about 1,500. So,
Yeah.
bolt on neck type of stuff made overseas, which is, I think, they definitely need that.
Yeah.
So, Kobe says, Robert, you need to hook Max up with a Voodoo Tesseract pickup. Are you familiar with Voodoo pickups?
No.
No, another one of those small boutique company guys, the pickup builder called Voodoo Pickups. A guy named Rich Auclair, and sitting at home during COVID, didn't have anything better to do, so he started building pickups, and next thing you know, he created a website and started selling them. And there's a couple of the smaller channels have demoed some of the stuff. They're great pickups. He's the one that I have is a prototype. I don't know that he's turned into a production model yet, but it's called the Tesseract. And there's Tony in chat saying, makes good stuff. But the Tesseract is it's a humbucker pickup with a 47K resistance output.
Whoa.
So, but I was very pleasantly surprised. It doesn't sound, it's not like just a total flamethrower like I thought it was going to be. It's actually got a lot of definition and no clarity and stuff like that to it. And I didn't sacrifice, for the most part anyway, I didn't have to sacrifice my clean tone on a clean amp. But it does really, really, really like high gain amps. Okay. It's pretty cool.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, so you might check him out, and he would. I know he would love the opportunity to send you something if you would be willing to put the time into doing something with him. Let's see. What else have we? Fuss Factory loves Robert. Fuss Factory pretty sure hates Robert, but Jim Woodard says, I think this is in reference to the Tone King we were talking about earlier. Jim says, did he tell you how he pissed off Paul Reed Smith? I'm not familiar with that situation.
No, he didn't. He didn't talk about that.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess he and Paul Smith don't get along too well. I've met Paul, and I actually spent some time with him when I was still at the store. He was doing a clinic. He came in to do a clinic at our store, and I was the manager that was tasked with hosting him for the day. Get him everything you need. Show him around, make sure he's everything's going the way that he wants it to go. And after sitting around, spending some time with him, he doesn't think about guitars and stuff like that anywhere near the same wavelength that the rest of us do. I mean, he's on a totally different wavelength from everybody else. I mean, at genius level. I say that as a compliment to him, but it's hard to keep up with Paul's brain when it comes to guitars and stuff. He's really a brilliant guy.
I've never talked to him. I would love to.
You get a kick out of it. You get a kick out of him. He's a real cool guy. But Dan C says, do you remember the 5150 iconic drama? I certainly do. It's one of those things, anytime that the guitar community, you see a new product like that come out, and there's gonna be people that are excited about it, and then there's gonna be people that are going to be critical of it, whether that criticism be needed or not. I mean, that's just the way that it's just the way it works, especially when you're talking about one of the big companies. I don't remember the last time Marshall put something out that there was some certain the purists didn't just crap all over, just because it's not a 74 plexi, right? That's just that's just how that is. So but I mean, honestly, that's really what kind of made me learn to appreciate and eventually inspired by channels like because you're like me, it doesn't. I don't need everything. I don't need the price tag on every single piece of gear in my rig to be $8,000 and above.
Right.
I mean, I love gear and I love high end gear, and my Gibsons and my Marshalls and stuff. They're not going anywhere. But I mean, I do the majority of my videos with a $700 Schecter guitar and a used Laney amplifier that I paid about $350 for.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your primary YouTube demo rig these days? You still using the Mustang combo?
Yeah, I use it a lot. I don't use it for everything, but yeah, the GTX 100 I use for a lot of things. Sometimes I'm using I've got a little 20-watt Marshall, the DSL 20 head.
Those are cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, it's not the most versatile amp.
Yeah.
But for if I'm going to do the Marshall sound, I'll use that. And then I have a Fender Blues Junior combo that I use quite a bit.
Hmm. What do you use the Blues Junior for? I'm actually surprised to hear that one in your repertoire.
Well, just any kind of lower gain, where I want a little bit of dirt on it, but yeah, just
Okay.
I haven't used it as much in the past few months, but for a while I was using it in almost every video. Not for the whole thing, but for like a piece of it. Right?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Very cool. You got you don't. I know you don't do too many pedal demos. You're more guitars and amps and stuff like that. But is there any of your amps that you feel are better pedal platform than others that you use?
No, not really. I mean, the Marshall's probably not very good because you can never really get it clean.
Right. They have gotten better about that, though. I think, my opinion. But a lot of that, I think, it depends on what you're running it through and how you have it dialed. But
yeah. No, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I use usually these days when I'm doing a pedal. Well, I guess what it is a lot of the pedals that I've been doing lately are like multi-effects pedals where they've got some kind of built-in amp sims or something. So
right.
in that, I'm not really using an amp with it. But the other thing is, like, a lot of the pedals I'll do, I just want a clean amp, right? And I want to get as much sound from the pedal as I can. And so when I do that, then I'm using the Fender, the solid state Fender,
Yeah.
the GTX. Yeah, that's probably what I do most of the time.
Cool. Very cool. All righty. Well, I think the chat seems to be getting quiet, and honestly, I don't want to take up any more of your time, than you've so generously given me here today. And
It's always great. It's always great to hang out with you, man. It's always great talking.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, we I think people should probably know. I mean, this is really our, between you and I, this is our first direct one-on-one interaction. I think, I mean, we've collaborated on a few videos and stuff together, but I think most of that's been via email.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So fun fact to those that are hanging out. But yeah, I've enjoyed everything that I've gotten to do together as well. You're one of the. I mean, you consider yourself a mid-sized channel, but to me, you're quite a one of the big guys. Especially as you hit 100K, and then you at 200 yet?
Not yet, like 170 something. So
okay, yeah. Your channel grew. I mean, it was growing pretty fast, but as soon as you hit that 100,000 mark, it really took off. I've noticed. So I mean, I've always been very grateful for everything that all the time that you've been willing to give to my teeny tiny little corner of the YouTube world here. So I greatly appreciate that.
No problem, dude. I always enjoy your stuff, man. And you've got a great attitude and a great perspective on things. So you're doing good work, man. And I'm happy to be involved.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, guys. One other thing I did want to ask, and I forgot about it. Any time frame on when the new record's going to be done and released and available?
Well, for the Kickstarter, I'm committed to the summer, essentially. Hopefully, like July of this coming year. So that's pretty much. But and so you'll get it then. Because it will come out to Kickstarter people first.
Right.
And once that's all finished up, then it'll be a public release after that.
Sure. Okay. Cool. We'll talk about it more between now and then, I'm sure, and rehash and reiterate. So.
Sure, yeah.
In the meantime, again, I appreciate all of your time here today, and I'm gonna go watch my Colts. So I'm recording the game, and I've gotten a few alerts here on my phone. So I mean, I already kind of sort of know what's going on, but
yeah.
They are, my wife's at work, and she really, she was pissed that they were playing on Saturday. So I'm recording the game, and we're gonna watch it together tonight.
Awesome.
So. See you guys.
All right. See you, man. Thank you.
Adios.
Take care.
See you, buddy.